Okay, so there's that short chant at the end of taking the precepts. Silena sugiting yanti, that's like the sila leads to heaven. Sila leads to heaven. Silena boga sampada, that's the sila establishes one in true wealth. Niputa, like sila is calming, peaceful, leads to peace, leads to cooling, leads to nibbana. So therefore, purify your sila, and perfect your sila. And I'll try to speak up a bit because it seems like the amplification's not working. And is that worth trying to fix, or is that just okay? So when we keep the sila over a long period of time, it's not the benefits of it aren't seen over a short period of time. They're seen over a long period of time generally. And when we start to get well established in virtue and in sila, then it helps us to have non-remorse. And so something I think that we tend to do, or maybe perhaps a mistake that we tend to make, and all of us I think make it, it's part of our Western conditioning, is that we're very punitive with ourselves, and that's the way we relate to virtue or precepts, is we relate to it in the sense of like we need to like punish ourselves if we break a precept, or even we need to feel bad. That's the appropriate response to breaking a precept. And of course, it's true that remorse is the natural result of unwholesome action. One way that we're able to purify our precepts if we transgress a training rule, because they're not like commandments. It's not like we break one and we go to hell permanently. But it's that we might feel remorse when we do unwholesome actions of body, speech, and mind. And so for that reason, we have these guidelines, these precepts. So it may happen that we slip up, that we break a precept. It may be a bit more minor, or maybe something which is a bigger deal. And the way to rectify that, we make it known, we talk it over with a teacher who we trust, or a Dhamma companion, Dhamma friend. It doesn't even have to be a monk. It can be anyone we trust. And in that, making it known, that helps to reestablish that precept. But then we can fall into this sense of castigating ourselves, or perpetually feeling bad about it, or feeling like we might need to criticize and punish ourselves for a certain period of time, and then we'll sort of be purified. So that's not really how it works. But we all do it, and so it's normal. And we may even hear about that it's a mistake to be punitive with ourselves, and then we might think like, I'm so stupid, I keep being punitive with myself, and sort of a downward spiral like that. Or it's kind of like Luang Por Ban's teaching, where he says, if you have a really strong wish for enlightenment or a really strong wish for nibbana, then that's all you get, is a wish for nibbana. Or it's like in the suttas where it says, nibbana is something you can't get by wishing or by mere wishing. So Luang Por Ban goes on to say, you'll just get a wish for nibbana, but if you don't uproot that which needs to be uprooted, and if you don't go against that which you need to go against, then that wish will just never be reached. On the flip side, if you don't have a wish for nibbana, you don't have a wish for enlightenment, but you do all the things that act as the causes for it to happen, then even though you might think, I don't want nibbana, I want to stay back and enlighten all sentient beings, but if you end up planting all the causes for it, then it has to ripen. It can't not happen. It's just the natural way of things. It's like these, hear stories of like these Tibetan practitioners or yogis that have these really, really wholesome aspirations to, they make these determinations to be reborn in hell so they can go and help beings be freed from hell. And then as they're dying, they're really, like, they instead of seeing that they're going to hell, they have these visions of deva realms and heavenly mansions, and say, but I wanted to go to hell to save all these beings. And well, too bad. You didn't plant the causes to go to hell. You can't go there. You have to, if you want to go to hell, you have to kill living beings and steal and lie and cheat. So your virtue was too pure. You can't go there. I think another thing that happens is we don't quite, and this is connected with how we relate to sila, is we tend to not give ourselves credit for our own goodness, and that causes us to always come up short, always think, okay, well, I'm never good enough, or it's always sort of not reaching the ideal we think we should be reaching. Or if we recollect our own generosity, or if someone praises us for being generous, we think, no, I'm just being arrogant, or no, they don't really mean it. They're just being, kind of, they're just trying to make me feel good, or so we don't give ourselves credit for our own virtue, our own generosity. It's hard to recognize our own goodness. So the way precepts are kept, or the way we make progress, it's not actually from being punitive with ourselves, and it's not actually from denying ourselves a recognition of our own goodness, but it's through a recognition of the way these things work according to nature. It's just like in the suttas, like sila leads to non-remorse, virtue leads to non-remorse. So It's just a very natural way of things. And then you have non-remorse leads very naturally to tranquility, a peace of mind. And then tranquility, as a natural result of tranquility, you have happiness. And then as a very natural result of happiness, you have samadhi, concentration, or the firm establishing of the mind as a very natural result of happiness, natural result of samadhi, knowledge and vision of things as they are. That's the yatha bhuta jnana dasanang. Natural result of seeing things as they are according to the way things are, according to truth, according to nature, is nibbida. That's the sense of weariness with the conditioned world. That leads directly to liberation. So you have this progression, this very natural progression of sila. But there's something that happens when we're punitive with ourselves or we don't recognize our own goodness, where we set up some obstacles for ourselves. They don't really need to be there. And really the correct way is just to give ourselves to the virtue, give ourselves to the natural progression. Some of the best advice Lumpur Pasano ever gave me was, we have the Dhamma, we have the Vinaya, we have the practice, and now it's time for you to just step aside and let the practice happen through you. It's not us practicing. It's not like I'm practicing to become enlightened, but it's like the practice is practicing us. So we just have to allow that natural progression to happen. And we might think, well, I have to do something. I have to be a hero. I have to make some sort of really heroic effort, or not lie down for 20 years, or or like really suffer a lot somehow, or something. But really, that's not. We might think that, but that's not really what we need. Just to allow this natural progression to happen in the process of shedding the defilements, shedding the dukkha. Yeah, there might be some sort of suffering that comes up. Lumpur Cha talked about that as the suffering that leads to the ending of suffering. So that might be something that happens in this process. Or especially for people who take on the monastic form in the higher ordination, there's this sense of this even more of a sense of shedding. We start to shed the sense of identity. We might even have an identity crisis where we, who am I? Or this sense of loss, a loss of identity. So it's very important at that time to we fall back on Dhamma Vinaya, we fall back on the sila. That's the ground we stand on. So So there might be a sense of loss. We might feel like we've lost something, or we might practice for a really long time and have this sense of like stagnation or like what am I doing? And I think there is kind of like a mental obstruction or a mental habit that almost everybody seems to have. I mean, I know I have it, where sometimes it's like waking up in the morning, like, what am I doing? Or is this really working? Or is this really the right thing to be doing? But then falling back on Dhamma Vinaya, there's just through the day there will be all these reminders, all these confirmations. Or sometimes we might think like, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to practice, I'm going to go do something else. You know, this isn't me. And actually it's true, it's actually that's true. But see, that comes from a lack of contemplating impermanence. So because there hasn't yet been this insight into impermanence, we're still able to see me in the future. That still somehow makes sense. If you see impermanence, me in the future does not make any sense. It's complete delusion. But if we haven't yet had that insight into impermanence, then me in the future seems very real, and many of our actions will be directed toward that. It's not like we don't have a plan or we just go into some sort of spaced out state, but that sense of identity in the future, this is, if we're interested in really getting to the heart of the Buddha's teaching, me in the future is a delusion. Me in the present is a delusion. Me in the past is a delusion. That's how the Buddha said, he attends unwisely. Who was I in the past? How was I in the past? What was I in the past? Having been what in the past? What did I become in the past? You know, how will I be in the future? Who will I be in the future? What will I be in the future? Having been what in the future? What will I be even further in the future? You know, who am I? What am I? How am I? What do other people think of me? You know, so this is attending unwisely. You could extend that to others. Who are others? How are others? What are others? So there's this mental tendency to want to define ourselves and others. Another obstacle we sort of needlessly set up for ourselves is that sense of comparing ourselves to others, and this is a big deal for us practitioners. You know, this person really seems to have it. You know, this person doesn't seem to have it. Or sort of, yeah. And that's not to say we don't see the goodness in others. That's super important, to see the goodness in others. But we make ourselves suffer by comparing ourselves to others, or by putting fixed definitions on ourselves and others. You know, I am this way, this is how I am, I've got this and that mannerism, it's never going to change. Or this other person's this way, they do this and this and that, and you know, that's not going to change. So again, that just comes back to that not yet seeing impermanence. So, heart of the Buddhist teaching, how do we see impermanence? That's really the key, is like the defining feature, the defining insight of Buddhism, is that insight into impermanence. So how do we get to that insight? That's our practice. So one thing we can think of, and this is a quality we call Dhamma Vichaya, which is perpetual contemplation of Dhamma. So if you have this mental factor of Dhamma Vichaya, and we're always trying to link up our experience with Dhamma somehow. That's Dhamma Vichaya, trying to link our experience with Dhamma, with the teachings, with the suttas, with what we've studied, and what we've listened to of Luang Por Cha and the Kruba Ajahns. How does our experience link up with all those teachings? One way we can view our experience is through contemplation of aging. So we think we were a young child before, now we're grown up, and then compare those two experiences and think, where did that childhood go? When we were children, we were in that experience, it happened. Now we're here. Where did it go? Or even yesterday, where did yesterday go? Or the old Abhayagiri, where did the old Abhayagiri go? Or my thoughts, who can remember all the thoughts they had yesterday? Where did those thoughts go? What happened? What happened to them? 1 hour ago, can we remember what we were thinking 1 hour ago? Where did those thoughts go? How important were they, really? So translate that into the contemplation of death. At the time of death, where is our life? Where did our life go? So that's what we're preparing ourselves for as practitioners. That's the insight into impermanence. And it's pretty subtle to see it, actually. It's happening all the time. We're totally in this experience of impermanence all the time, even while we're sleeping. Everything, body and mind, it's all in flux. It's all changing all the time. So the time of death is not going to be any different than thinking, where am I now compared to my childhood? Where is that experience? Where did it go? These are really good. These are really helpful contemplations for what? For letting go. We can also think about this in terms of, say if we got angry yesterday and we feel okay now, we can think, okay, well, where did that anger go? What happened? So even all these defilements, everything, it's all impermanent. Or if we had a peaceful meditation one day and then our next meditation wasn't peaceful, we think, well, what happened? Where was that peace? That peace was impermanent. So what is real peace? What's the Buddha pointing to? If the peace I felt in my meditation was impermanent, what's the Buddha actually pointing to? He couldn't have been pointing to that because I don't feel it now. But the Buddha is bringing it back even further to a more fundamental level, the insight into impermanence. He's bringing it back to the insight into impermanence, and if we are able to dwell in that insight into impermanence, that's a deeper sense of peace than we might achieve through the kind of peace we might only have that's dependent on the formal practice, the sitting meditation. So that insight into impermanence is key. So it's like we look at our experience, we're looking at our experience now, think, what was our experience in the past? Where did that experience go? Then we can translate that to our present experience. What am I experiencing now? So that brings the insight into impermanence into the present. So whatever we're experiencing now, it's also just flowing on, flowing on. It's always changing. It's like we're young, we grow older, we slowly grow older, we grow into adults, we grow old, eventually we die, we pass away. That's just the natural progression of things. In terms of the body, it's like if you hold virtue precepts, naturally leads on to non-remorse, naturally leads on to peace and well-being, leading on to happiness, concentration, knowledge and vision of things as they are, world weariness, nibbida, leading on to liberation. So the Buddha teaches about that type of a natural progression as well. We translate this to all things. All things are like this. All conditioned things are impermanent. And let this not be a depressing contemplation. This is actually supposed to give us some sort of hope that it's possible. But it entails us calling into question the obstructions that we set up for ourselves through either being punitive with ourselves or failing to recognize our own goodness. We set up obstacles, we prop up obstacles for ourselves. Or through trying to prop up a sense of identity or we might have an idea like I want to get something for myself from the practice. So all of those things, we set up these obstructions along the path. But if we can see through that and just come back to that very basic insight into impermanence, then those can fall away in the moment. Those can all fall away. We might prop them up again later. That's fine. I mean, that's going to be the mental habit. The whole practice is to try to use the Dhamma Vichaya to figure these things out. But in the moment, we always have that choice to. It takes courage, takes faith to come back to impermanence and just allow those things to fall away in the moment. Then we'll start to see more clearly what's actually happening. We can also think of impermanence in more of like a long-term sense. So something like this building, like the new reception hall, we think, well, eventually it'll degenerate, it'll fall apart. It might last for 100 years, 200 years, even longer, but eventually it'll fall apart. So when it eventually falls apart, where was it? What was it? These things are always in motion, either in a short-term sense or in a long-term sense. Some people might be afraid of what's happening out in the world, and we always think in these kind of absolutes, but even if everything falls apart, it'll still change after that again. The whole world is changing right now, and if it changes to be really bad, even if it all becomes really bad, it'll still change again after that. That's just the way of things. Or if somehow it becomes really good, it'll still change after that. That knowledge and vision of the way things are is really welded together with, connected with the insight into impermanence. When we really do more than just scratch the surface of the practice, then we'll start to find that the mind is always looking for somewhere to land. It's always trying to find some sort of footing somewhere. It's always trying to land somewhere. It's like the eye is always trying to land on sights. The ear is always trying to land on sounds. It's always seeking, always searching for something. The nose is landing on odors. The tongue is landing on taste. The body is landing on tactile sensations. The mind is always landing on thoughts and ideas. And we're always spinning around, whirling around, trying to find some sort of something, some sort of footing, some sort of refuge somewhere. And the insight into impermanence really calls that into question. And so we might have this sense of dissonance, or not being able to find a place to stand. And so there might be this sense of dissonance or disconnection. So it's important at that point to then take refuge in the insight itself. Take refuge in the insight into impermanence itself. And at the ultimate level, like Luang Ban says, where does the mind that has let go of everything, where does it abide? We always need some sort of place to abide. The mind that has let go of everything, where does it abide? And he says that the mind of letting go itself is the abiding. So that's something you can let sink in. The mind of letting go is the abiding. Abiding in that sense of non-clinging itself, abiding in letting go itself. And we're not at that point, but it's a helpful contemplation to think about these things. Again, that's Dhamma Vichaya. That's trying to link our experience with Dhamma somehow. Anything we've read in the suttas, or Owen was quoting Luang Por Cha earlier today, using those quotes from Luang Por Cha, using the suttas to try to link our experience together with that. It was the Luang Por Cha asking a group of people, if I told you ghosts are real, would you believe me? Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm. I think it was that they had just came back from a trip and they were asking.
And they said, yes, we would. He said, well, you're stupid. and then somebody else came and said, like, oh, this ghost was, harassing us or something. And he's like, oh yeah, I know that ghost. So that, this is all connected with Dhamma Vichaya. Why would he say something like that? How would he teach people like that? It's good to think about these things. The nature of our minds is that they just can't stop thinking. So I think it's helpful to not necessarily try to make our mind stop thinking, but to curb the thinking into Dhamma thinking. And again, I have to quote Luang Por Ban again. Last time I was able to go pay respects to him with the Nanachak crew, and all the lay people were there, and we were having the meal with Luang Por Ban, and he was like, if you all want to see Dhamma, I'll tell you what you have to do. You have to think a lot. He's like, and everybody's kind of course, that's kind of a controversial statement. Oh, what's he saying? So you have to think a lot if you want to see Dhamma. But you have to think only about Dhamma if you want to get it. But he's saying, but think a lot. Definitely giving the advice to think a lot. And that's something we can do. Or it's kind of like this morning reflection Ajahn Titapanyo gave, where just reading the suttas. If it wasn't possible, I wouldn't tell you to do it. But because it's possible, I give you these teachings, I tell you to do it. So all of this can be an encouragement just to be steadfast with the precepts, with the sila. Remember that these things take a long time, and it's okay. It's okay if we do set up obstacles for ourselves, and we all do it, and this is normal. Maybe sometimes we can just tell ourselves it's okay. We can take that as a meditation object. Just sort of sit down in meditation and just tell yourself, okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Just if we get into that kind of like sense of like, I'm a hopeless case, or like just, just criticizing ourselves and, you'll never get it, you suck, just like, I know how so many times I've talked to myself like that, and it took me so long to figure out that it was never helpful a single time. Maybe the only way in which it was helpful was that it gave me the insight that it wasn't helpful. But then it's okay to recollect our own generosity, recollect our own virtue, recollect our own goodness, and internally smile to ourselves and just, okay, I'm moving in the right direction. Maybe I am going to get this. Maybe I'm starting to get this. Maybe it is going to work. So, little confirmations. I mean, there are things we can verify in the Buddha's teaching, like just little teachings, little snippets here and there. Like a generous person is never without friends. That's one of the Buddha's teachings. And we can see that for ourselves. So I don't have that much that I can think of to say this evening, but just hopefully these words are encouraging, and if they're encouraging, then please take them and use them, and if they're discouraging, then please just forget all of it. And I'll leave it there for this evening.